Hi, I'm Sydney, and I am a servant of the Almighty God. Once again, continuing the series on recognizing God's omnipotence, I want to get to this episode, which I will focus on intrinsic intelligence. And I believe that intrinsic intelligence is the key that really brings science and religion together. See that line on my book, Humanity's Inflection Point, where religion has been separating us, dividing us, and science has been taking us up. It brings us together. Nobody debates about computers and medicine and technology. It unites the entire world. Well, intrinsic intelligence will be the key that does the same for all of us, for religion and science. So let me, let me step back and take what this whole intrinsic intelligence is about. So let me start with what I think is an updated, as an IT guy, right? Start with what is knowledge. And I think an appropriate definition of knowledge is useful information in accessible memory, right? So it has to be information that you can use, and it has to be in memory that you can access that memory so that you can use the information. If it's in somebody else's memory, you can't use it. It's not accessible to you, right? And most of the things that we know is because we've been taught. So it's from an external source. It's taught to us. But even within us, there is a lot of intrinsic intelligence. Our immune system, our autonomic systems. For instance, you hear this thing about if you're out in the freezing cold, how your body will conserve the warmth by basically sacrificing your limbs, and so the blood stays within the core where it needs to preserve life. That the body has to know. And so whenever you hear know something, you have to think about information in accessible memory. And so the body has to know. Our immune system has to know. It has to get that information that says this is how you respond. And so, I have to put out this definition of intrinsic intelligence. It's knowledge that is gained. I should put, as I have to read my own definition here now. Evident knowledge that is not gained from an external source, right? So when we observe something, we realize, no, this thing has knowledge. It's like our immune system. It knows. Long before we recognized it, the immune system knows, it knew how to react to external threats, etc. And this is the key, because this is something that's evident. This intrinsic intelligence, it's everywhere in nature. I think everybody's familiar with bees go out and they may find food and they may come back, and somebody say a mile or 2 miles or whatever it is, but they go out there, they find, and they come back and they do a little dance. They do a little dance, and every bee in that, that's in that hive there gets it. Nobody has to go like, what did he say again? It's a similar thing. Like, we look at ant colonies where each, we have these, they're all ants, they're all in that colony, but each one has different ones have different roles, and they know what role they have to perform and how to perform those roles. These are examples of intrinsic intelligence, evident knowledge that is not coming from an external source. No one teaches them this. Good examples again, the archer fish. It does not get any training from other fishes. No one tells it how to go about, creating this sophisticated bullet of water where the first part is kind of slower, then faster and faster, so it actually forms like a bullet because it's getting pushed from behind, and the ability to look out of water onto air where we have parallax, but it compensates for all of that. Things like the Corolla spider that uses quartz and has been using quartz for who knows how long, thousands, millions of years. So it knows how to identify quartz. So whenever you hear know, we have to think of knowledge. Usable information in accessible memory. It's in the memory of that organism, that plant, that animal, and even plants, yes. Because there's evidence now that some plants, when they're under attack, they may perform certain actions. Like I heard about the acacia, it gets an attack, it releases some gas that tells the other acacia, oh, we're under attack. And so they start, doing some chemical things within them. So this knowledge of how to do these things, how to respond, this is what I refer to as intrinsic intelligence, because that knowledge, that information on what to expect and how to react to it. Again, like that Corolla spider, the ability to know what a quartz crystal is, how to arrange that. That is knowledge that is not coming from an external source, and it's embedded somehow into that creature. Now, think about that for a moment. And I think this is where we just go, oh, just nature did it. Well, let me just take you down this path a little bit more. It means that this nature, right, which I believe is the manifestation of God's omnipotence, knows, and I like to use this analogy, right? We can think of every living thing as a DNA configuration, because everything has DNA, and it's like DNA tweak these genes, tweak all these things within a DNA, and you get a plant, you get an animal, you get moss, you get a giant redwood, you get a mouse, you get a snake, because it's just DNA that has been tweaked, with all the genes, and we're not there yet to really do that stuff, because it's almost like alchemy with DNA. But if you think of every living creature as a DNA configuration, then there must be a source that is aware of, and again, as a software guy, has to build the programming, the knowledge, the information. It has to build it for that specific creature. So it has to build one for a worm. It has to build one for a, within the beehive, you have the drone, the queen, and the workers, and all these things. It has to build one for each of them, because they have to know. So it has to build it and then embed it into every one of these creatures. Just think about it. One source building that information and embedding it into every DNA configuration, including us. Because our immune system, we don't control that. Our autonomic systems, we do not control. Digestion, all of these things we do not control. So there is this intrinsic intelligence within us that knows how to perform these actions. And that is analogous to us loading programs into a robot. The autonomous driving vehicles, or better yet, any robot that has to make decisions. A certain amount of basic information before it starts learning has to be loaded. And this is what we see in every creature. When we talk about echolocation, that is not taught. They have to know this. The programming, to use something that we're familiar with, has to be loaded initially. They can learn after that, like us, right? We don't control our immune system. We learn all these other things. We learn programming. We learn to drive cars. We learn to do medicine. We learn all these things. But there is so much within us that we don't have to learn. It's already there. And information must be stored, as far as we know, it must be stored somewhere in memory, because we can recall it to use it. And so this is the crux of that creator has to know the memory that's in a spider, in every species, every spider version basically has to know that memory in each of them and what has to be loaded, because the Portia spider, the Corolla spider, all of these spiders, they behave differently. The program that's loaded, that intrinsic intelligence that has to be embedded, is different in every one of these creatures. But something has to know, has to first build it and then load it into every DNA configuration. That is the key, because that's one source. Unless we want to say, because we see coordination. When you look at an ecosystem, we see coordination. Vultures perform a certain role, and even things like vultures, their heads being clear, and we think, oh, just nature. No, think about it. That is a DNA configuration right there that says, okay, these genes have to ensure that the head is, and then they perform a certain role. Their digestive system being able to digest the things that they eat. All of this is knowledge that is not externally learned. And it's within that creature. And so when we look at this intrinsic intelligence that is pervasive throughout basically all living things, so it's like every DNA configuration, every creature has to have, like every species has to have a different intrinsic intelligence loaded, so that they can start and survive and thrive. I see things like, the baby deer that knows, stay still, up until a certain age. They have to know that. They have to, because, again, this is not learned behavior. We see it all over. So now when you look out there, you see the majesty of something, of the supreme being, our creator, being able to use our terms to build a program loaded into every different thing. A squirrel knows what to do. A snake knows what to do. The knowing that program has to be loaded. A frog, a fish, all of these things, it's knowledge. The turtles that go back to the beach where they were born, that knowledge is in there. They are not taught this, but it's in there so that when certain things happen, that is like again, analogous to our AI. It's in there, it's programmed in there. That's that intrinsic knowledge, that intrinsic information, the knowledge base, the information is stored in there. And it's coming all from one source. One source basically programming that information into every living species. Science, and I am trying right now, and you can assist with this. I am trying to, I'm reaching out to these scientific organizations so that they can start looking into this. What is this memory? And it may not be this year. It may take us, a year, 5 years, 1,000 years, but we need to start looking, like I said, with memory and how information, where it's stored. Now, I don't know if we'll ever get the keys to that, right? Because if you think about it, like I say, if and when we get access to that memory and how information is stored, again, as an IT guy, we can encrypt, decrypt, and I can go through on any different platforms. But if we had access to that, we would never need a lie detector again. We can simply, like this video, you can play it back, you can go forward, same thing. We would be able to go into anyone, attach some leads or whatever, and scroll through that memory. And anything in their history, we can see what they experienced, what their memory is of that time in their history. We will be able to see all of that. Amazing. But it starts with us recognizing information is stored in memory. And we realize throughout nature, everything that any creature knows is a product of information that's somehow stored in their memory. That which is not learned, that is intrinsic intelligence. And it's a key that links us to a creator that knows every DNA configuration, every creature, and is able to embed the relevant information for their survival. Think about this. This is going to be a wonderful time for humanity when we can just tap into that. But recognizing for science that we need to seek this information. For religion, recognize, because even evolution would be driven by that intrinsic intelligence. When you encounter certain situations, try this, and this is what would result in mutations, successful mutations, which we observe as the whole entire process of evolution. And so this knowledge, right? This information is somewhere deep within memory, and it's not at the macro level. Like, we don't have to think about it. It's somewhere very, very deeply embedded. It's almost like it's part of the DNA. I don't know that it is, but it's almost as if it's somewhere in there. It's embedded, this information. And when we recognize if it's there and it's information, it has to be embedded by someone who first designed it and says, you will do this and this and this. And the concept of free will. So I give you a bunch of information and now you become autonomous. You can go on your own because you have the basic information. The car does not need the driver sitting there. In comparison to our AI, it knows that if the GPS is off, it uses LiDAR or different methods to scan and look at visual cues. It looks at is it raining? Look at the things around certain conditions around and make decisions. Similarly, intrinsic intelligence would be much more advanced because it would be designed by a creator billions of years ahead of us. And so while we search for what is this memory, how is this, we can recognize it all around us, and we can get to that convergence of recognizing science is now exposing that, again, intrinsic intelligence exists in every living thing, and it must come from one source who designed and implemented it. So this, to me, is now the key, and this is what will lead to humanity's inflection point, where science and religion converges. Religion has been taking us down with all the divisions, but when science now eventually shows, no, there is one source. There is no need to think that we are special and as we can break the commandments. We are all granted this wonderful gift of intrinsic intelligence and life. We are all equal. We need to be the good stewards of that which He has granted us, and get rid of the hate. Do not allow the demons of hate and greed and lust and deception to get between us and use us to perpetuate their dirty and sinful deeds, because that's all. We cannot control them. They use us through our weaknesses, human weaknesses, greed, lust, deception, all of these things. They use us. But once we start recognizing that this intrinsic intelligence is coming from one source, we recognize the Creator. We recognize that His caring, His designs for every creature, in land, in sea, in the air above us, everywhere. Like even when we talk about the ozone layer, we see that it's a wonderful design. So I want you to think about this and take this message, because this is the key. Intrinsic intelligence is what now will bring all of us together, recognizing that there is a Creator. Both science and religion will start merging through recognition of intrinsic intelligence. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and remind you that it is not a coincidence. It's a series of conscious decisions that took you down this path. And hopefully you would take this, and go with it, because this is for all of us. It is the beginning of that turning point, that inflection point in humanity's history, in our civilization, so that we can become better. I want to thank you again, and until next time, may God bless. Thank you.